It is now my great pleasure to introduce alumnus Richard Byrne. Richard graduated from Harpur College in 1983 with his bachelor's degree in art and obtained his MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Richard is the president of Benefit Street Partners. He also serves as chairman and chief executive officer of Business Development Corporation of America and chairman and chief executive officer of Benefit Street Partners, Realty Trust, Inc. Prior to joining Benefit Street Partners, Richard was chief executive officer of Deutsche Bank Securities. Before that, he was global co-head of the Leveraged Finance Group and global head of credit research at Merrill Lynch. He was also a consistently top-ranked credit analyst. Richard is a member of the board of directors of MFA Financial and New York Roadrunners. He is also the founder and executive officer of Kasai Elite Grappling Championships. I have been very pleased to get to know Richard as one of our engaged alumni. He has returned to campus to speak with students about careers and created an endowment fund in Judaic studies. It is my sincere honor and pleasure to welcome Richard to the podium and present him with the Harpur College Distinguished Alumni Award. Richard.
Well, thank you, Dean Chilton. I also want to thank Provost Neiman, President Stanger, distinguished faculty, parents, relatives, friends, everybody who's come here today, and especially, yes, you, the Harpur College class of 2018. I know it's early, but you only get to do this once. The Harpur College class of 2018. That sounds good, much better. I also want to thank Senator Schumer for agreeing to come here as my warm-up band today. That was very nice of him. So I first want to say how excited I am to be here and how honored I am to be here. This is a special place for me, and to be your commencement speaker is really an event of a lifetime for me, so thank you very much. Also, I wanted to share with you some news that I just heard that unfortunately the senator just left, because I'm sure he would have liked to have heard this. It turns out that the crowd assembled today for this commencement is the largest crowd ever to be assembled for a commencement ever, period. So we have that. As Dean Chilton went on in my biography, you may have heard that I graduated in 1983, and if you're doing the math, that's 35 years ago, which is a really long time. Or as my daughters would say, Dad, you're ancient. And a lot has changed in the world. Certainly a lot has even changed on this place. Two notable things that I noticed. One, when I went to school here, we used to be called the Colonials. I came back and you guys are called what, the Bearcats? What even is a Bearcat? Also, walking around campus, so many new buildings to what I had experienced when I was here. It's incredible. Even the living facilities, you guys live in these big, beautiful high-rises. You're very lucky. When I went to school here, I lived in College in the Woods. It wasn't the same College in the Woods. This was way before that. We actually lived in the woods. All right, is he serious? I don't know. But given all this change, what can I know that you, as fresh graduates of a top college, don't? Well, I've amassed several decades of experience in a place called the real world. It can be tough out there in a way that this nurturing environment of Harpur College just isn't. This outside place can be daunting and unforgiving, so I think you're going to need a plan. And what I did, I hope it helps, is reflected on my experiences post-graduation and tried to come up with 5 pieces of advice. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to share them with you. Good? Good? Okay. First piece of advice, your first job. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is the journey that will become your career. So let's start with people in the audience. Show of hands. How many have lined up your first job after graduation? How many of you know what you're going to do? Hands. That's pretty impressive. I wouldn't have expected anything less. Well, it may not be news to you that your first job is unlikely to be the job that ultimately the career you settle in, but what might be news is that it's probably unlikely to even be in the industry that you're starting out. Things are going to change, and this is okay. It's not bad. What really matters is the course you plot for yourself along the way, and sometimes serendipity might even be your best form of GPS. I'll tell you my story quickly. I was an art major like some of you. Art major. And my dream was to go into advertising. I was going to be a big famous executive, sort of like what's now depicted as Don Draper and Mad Men, that kind of thing. And I had a second choice, or another choice, and that was Wall Street. The movie Wall Street, I don't know if any of you saw it, but think of Master of the Universe. I had always followed stocks and bonds. Unfortunately, I just never had enough money to invest in any of them, but I had an aspiration there as well. But given my art background, I just thought the creative side of advertising made it seem like my first choice. So I went at it whole hog. I interviewed, and I just tried to find interviews, and I sent out letters, and I finally nailed an interview at one of the big advertising firms. And I studied for this thing. I stayed up, and I did all-nighters. Studied commercials. Back in those days, there weren't even DVRs or YouTube. You literally had to watch entire shows to watch commercials. Anyway, I think I nailed the interview. The woman and I really connected who interviewed me, and towards the end of the interview, she all but told me I had the job. After this thing ended, I was on cloud nine. I began to contemplate my life as an advertising executive. 2.5 kids in a house with a dog. I mean, it was perfect. But before I got too deep into my thoughts, I had to go to the bathroom. That all-nighter was really fueled by nonstop cans of Coca-Cola. We didn't have Red Bull back then either. So I got to the bathroom, and I remember this as if it was yesterday. This is, I don't know, 35 years ago. And I looked around the bathroom, and I didn't see any urinals. And then another couple of seconds went by, and it occurred to me that, you know what, I may not be in the men's room. Another second or two, it all clicked. I needed to get out of there. I just was about to turn around. The stall door opened for the toilet, and guess who walked out? That's right, it was the woman who interviewed me. I looked at her, she looked directly at me. I couldn't even utter a sound. I turned around and left. I didn't get that job. Needless to say, it took me, I don't know, 24 more interviews, and that's what launched my career in investment banking. So sometimes it's just serendipity, which brings me to advice number 2, and this is important. Strive to be world class at everything you do, no matter how menial that this task may seem. Develop a pattern of success for yourself. Get yourself noticed. This advice came in handy for me at my first job. I was a listed equity sales trader at Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith. Liquid equity sales trader is a big job. You executed big block trades for some of the largest institutions in the world. Of course, as a brand new guy at Merrill Lynch, I did nothing of the sort. My job was basically be the mole for the traders themselves. I processed the trades and basically did errands for them. So I became, and I was determined to be, the best errand boy that you could possibly be. I was the first person in the morning and often the last to leave. I tried to know everything there was to know about every trade the firm ever did. In addition, I even took on extra tasks. The firm had lots of research analysts. I would, in the morning before the traders got in, summarize all of the research that had come out and all that the analysts had said and try to put it on their desk before they arrived. There wasn't email back then, so I literally had to Xerox each page and put it on their desk. I maybe took this too far when I decided to make the coffee and try to have that brewed before they arrived too, but that was a little weird because I never drank coffee. It was only a couple of years later that I found out that they absolutely hated my coffee. But you know what? It wasn't about the coffee. It was about getting noticed and them appreciating my effort and advancing my career. So remember this, and this is maybe the most important thing I'm going to tell you. How can you expect to be a successful executive without being successful in all of the jobs leading up to it? Build a pattern of success. Be world-class at everything you do. This will get you noticed. Which brings me to advice number 3, which is to build your own personal database. The knowledge you acquire and the people you meet will be the lifeblood of your career. Every year at the bank, now we're fast forwarding, I used to give the opening remarks to our incoming class of analysts and associates, which really was the newly minted MBAs and BAs, some like yourself maybe, that were starting in Wall Street. I would say something like this. Welcome everyone. You're going to be given a lot of work and very long hours. It's going to be grueling. This is a tough job. The good news is that you have the much better end of this deal. In addition to being well paid, you will gain exposure to all areas of our firm, learn key details about our business, and meet many, many important people. This is the currency that will advance your careers. Opportunities come all the time. Pay attention, build your personal databases, and be ready for these opportunities when they arise. Well, in my case, it turns out I had spent so much time becoming a research expert, I was reading reports and cultivating relationships with our research analysts, that I was able to build my own database and network my way to a coveted job as a founding member of the high yield bond research team. High yield bond means junk bonds. And I had no idea at the time of what an exciting area that was going to lead to. And that's sort of one of the main places that propelled my career. Which brings me to advice number 4, which is when you do your homework, and yes, there will be homework sometimes after college, and you're sure you're right, and you've analyzed the heck out of a situation, then stick your neck out. Stick your neck out. This is how you're going to get noticed. I had a great time as a high-yield research analyst. My first job in research was to analyze the casino gaming sector. You're not going to believe this, but 2 of my biggest, probably my 2 biggest clients at the time were none other than Steve Wynn and Donald Trump. It's true. I had no idea at the time, I'm sure none of you did either, how things would have turned out for those 2 guys, but that's clearly a story for a different day. What was cool about the job was that an analyst basically did 2 things. They researched companies, developed opinions about those companies, and wrote the opinions in the form of research reports. But it was an odd thing back in Wall Street in those days. It was a very Gentile period. And there was no such thing as a sell recommendation. Nobody ever came out and really said something nasty about a company back then. There were only 2 opinions you can have when you rated a stock or a bond. It was buy or hold. Well, that was unfortunate because I had done an enormous amount of work on a company called Bally Manufacturing. The more work I did, the more obvious it was to me that this company was in imminent danger. It was probably going to go under. So I did the unthinkable. I wrote a sell report on Bally's. It was called Bally's Not So Grand. I did this against the advice of my bosses. I did this against the advice of our clients, and I even did this against the advice of our banking team that feared losing a very important client of their own. It turns out that the company did go under shortly after my report. An activist investor who had taken a stake in Bally was so interested in my analysis that he began to have regular dialogue with me. He went on to become the largest shareholder and ultimately CEO and chairman of the company. With my help, he successfully restructured the company, and over the ensuing years, we got to underwrite literally 100% of Bally's business after that. I took a chance, I stuck my neck out, and it paid off. Well, I followed my own advice after that, and I, 1, embraced the journey. 2, I tried to be world-class at everything I did, no matter how small the task might be. I continued to build my personal database. And when I believed I was right and I had really done the work, I was willing to stick out my neck. It took me very far. I got promoted a few times and ultimately ran the high yield or junk bond business at my firm. I left after 14 years to another firm, Deutsche Bank, where I took on even more responsibilities. And then after over 3 decades as a banker, I left, I stuck my neck out to become president of my own investment management firm, or of an investment management firm called Benefit Street Partners. It was small. That small firm today, now 6 years later, has 25 billion assets under management. And I have to tell you, it is a lot of fun and it's incredibly gratifying to work and do something at a much smaller scale. So all of you budding entrepreneurs out there, take heart. It's really exciting. This brings me to my 5th and final point. Remember I said there were 5. This one is not so much about business, it's about life. It's live every day to the fullest. Cherish your family, enjoy your friends, do what you love. You never know how long you're going to have. This sounds really trite, I know, almost like bumper sticker trite, but this really came home to me in a big way earlier this year when I was diagnosed with malignant melanoma, and I actually began to contemplate my own mortality. Well, my story has a really happy ending. After surgery, I tested negative, and I am now cancer-free. Thank you. But nevertheless, this experience made a lasting impression upon me. And in that vein, I just want to say in the audience today is my beautiful, smart, loving, and supportive wife, somewhere up there, Marty, along with my 2 gorgeous and successful daughters, Margot and Liza. I tried to persuade both of my daughters otherwise, but both decided, go figure, to attend schools other than SUNY Binghamton. Despite this, believe it or not, both are doing exceptionally well and thriving. And I just must say that those 3 people are the loves of my life. And for all of my career success, without my family, I would have exactly, precisely, 0. So you're going to like this part a little bit more. I also make a point to stay in close contact with many of my close friends. 6 of my very closest friends today were my classmates at Binghamton. We even speak daily on a group chat called Crew. I know, we don't do any of the other stuff. By the way, the 6 of us and a few others were the founding members of a frat on campus that we were glad to see is still here, Tau Kappa Epsilon, Teak. Anybody Teak? Guys, that thing really took off. Anyway, I'm delighted to say that in the audience today are some of those very close friends, and in fact some of my closest. Paul Fishman, Jeff and Jolie Korak, and Dave and Pam Well. Thank you guys for coming. I also do what I love, and I have to throw this in. In my case, it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's right, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I took it up about 15 years ago when I was in my early 40s. Some called it a midlife crisis. I called it a passion. Now, after all these years, I am a first-degree black belt, and I own my own martial arts gym, and it's one of the things I do every day. So do what you love. So I know how this all probably sounded. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I know I just made this sound like a ridiculous easy fairy tale. It is anything but. Guys, life is hard. The real world has many, many ups and downs. Sometimes the downs feel insurmountable. In my case, I guess I just won a war of attrition. If you do anything long enough, you just may ultimately succeed more than you fail. Be prepared for this struggle. Be resilient. Work hard. I really hope this was helpful. Good luck, Bearcats. You graduated. You graduated from SUNY Binghamton. You guys can do anything. The rest is up to you. Go get them. Harpur College, class of 2018.